It is May 1961 in Turin, Italy. The night is late. Two brothers sit in front of a wall of radio equipment, a tangle of wires, dials and antennas built from chicken wire and salvaged pipe. They call this place Torre Bear. It is their window to space. The signal arrives weak, wavering, but unmistakable. A woman's voice, speaking Russian. She sounds afraid. "Isn't this dangerous?" she says. "I feel hot. I see a flame." The transmission cuts out. The Soviet Union will never acknowledge this moment. The world will not know about it for decades, and to this day, no government has ever confirmed or denied what the brothers recorded that night. This is the story of the Lost Cosmonauts. To understand how a transmission like this could exist and why it might have been buried, you need to understand one thing about the Soviet space program. It operated entirely in secret. Not the way modern governments keep secrets, with leaks and whistleblowers and freedom of information requests. The Soviets erased failures completely. If a mission went wrong, it did not happen. Names were removed from the record. Photographs were altered. The people involved were told never to speak. We know this not from theory, but from documented fact. In October 1960, an R-16 rocket exploded on a launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The fire burned so hot that metal dissolved. At least 78 people died, including the head of the Soviet Strategic Rocket Forces, Marshal Nedelin, who was sitting too close to the pad when it ignited. The Soviet Union said nothing. For 29 years, the disaster did not officially exist. Then there is Valentin Bondarenko. Bondarenko was 24 years old, a cosmonaut selected in the same group as Yuri Gagarin. On March 23, 1961, he was training inside a pressurized chamber, breathing pure oxygen. He removed a medical sensor and tossed the alcohol-soaked pad aside. It landed on a hot plate. In a pure oxygen environment, the fire was instantaneous. He died hours later from his burns. The Soviets buried his name. He was removed from group photographs, erased from the official roster. His family was told to stay quiet. He would not be acknowledged until 1986, 25 years after his death. These are confirmed facts, part of the historical record. Keep those names in mind, Nedelin, Bondarenko, as you hear what the brothers recorded. Achille and Giovanni Judica-cordiglia grew up building radios. In 1949, at ages 10 and 16, they pooled their savings and bought surplus U.S. Army radio equipment, circuit boards, receivers, transmitters, at 5 cents a pound. When the family moved to Turin in 1959, the brothers upgraded their operation. They built antennas from chicken wire and metal pipe, mounted them on the terrace of their building, and named their station Torre Bear. It was not a professional facility. It was built by two young men with passion and very little money. But it worked. On October 4th, 1957, they tuned into the frequency broadcast on the news and heard something that would captivate the entire world. The steady, rhythmic beep of Sputnik, the first artificial satellite in human history, orbiting overhead. A month later, they received signals from Sputnik 2. This time what they heard was not a beep. It was a heartbeat, irregular, warm. The heart of a dog named Laika, the first living creature to reach orbit. Laika would not come back. Her capsule was not designed for re-entry. The brothers had recorded the last heartbeats of a creature dying alone in space. Achille kept that recording. He played it back many times in the years that followed. He said it never got easier to hear. There is something particular about receiving a signal you were never supposed to receive, about tuning into a frequency and finding something alive on the other end of it, something that trusted the universe enough to keep beating, and then didn't. It was, in retrospect, a preview. November 28, 1960. The Bochum Radio Observatory in West Germany picks up a transmission on frequencies used by Soviet satellites. The brothers tune in. What they receive is not telemetry data or a communications ping. It is Morse code, 3 letters repeated. SOS. Save our souls. The brothers record the signal and analyze it. Based on the transmission's drift and their calculations of the object's speed, they reach a staggering conclusion. The craft is not orbiting the Earth. It is on an escape trajectory, moving away from the planet, accelerating outward, heading toward deep space. A cosmonaut, they believe, lost, drifting forever into the void between planets. 2 months later, February 2nd, 1961, Torre Bear receives another signal. It is a sound that makes Achille go still, breathing, heavy, labored, as though someone is struggling to stay conscious, and beneath it, a rhythm, slow, uneven, fading, a heartbeat. Achille calls his professor, Dr. Achille Mario Dagliotti, a leading cardiologist at the University of Turin. He plays the recording over the phone. The doctor listens in silence. Then he says, "This is the heart of a dying man." Think about what that means. If this recording is genuine, Yuri Gagarin was not the first human in space. Someone else reached orbit before him, and that person died up there, alone, while the Soviet Union deleted him from history. 2 days after the recording, the Soviets issue a brief statement. A spacecraft has burned up on re-entry. No mention of a crew, no mission name, a single sentence, and then silence. 3 months pass. Then, in May 1961, the brothers receive their most disturbing recording yet. A woman's voice, speaking Russian. She is clearly aboard some kind of spacecraft. She begins calmly. Then her voice changes. "Isn't this dangerous? I feel hot. I see a flame." The recording does not cut off cleanly. It ends the way a signal ends when the source is gone. A 1965 Reader's Digest article adds more detail, reporting additional voices from the same transmission. 2 men and a woman with this translation. "Conditions growing worse. Why don't you answer? We are going slower. The world will never know about us. The world will never know about us." If this is genuine, those are the final words of 3 people dying in orbit, speaking to a ground control that had either lost contact or, more disturbingly, had simply stopped responding. Consider what this would mean historically. Valentina Tereshkova is recognized as the first woman in space. She flew in June 1963. But this recording is from May 1961, 2 years earlier, which would mean the real first woman in space died up there, her mission classified, her name erased, just like Bondarenko. For decades, these recordings sat in an uncomfortable middle ground, compelling but unverifiable. Then people began examining the technical details. The first problem is the heartbeat itself. In Soviet spacecraft, physiological data was not transmitted as raw audio. It was encoded into a carrier signal, a series of interrupted tones where each interruption indicated a heartbeat. It was a data format, machine-readable, designed for ground analysis. No Vostok capsule ever broadcast heartbeat data as a direct audio feed. Not before that recording, not after it. What the brothers recorded sounds nothing like genuine Soviet telemetry. The encoding scheme does not match anything in the program's known hardware. The second problem is the woman. The Reader's Digest account describes a 3-person crew, but the Vostok capsule held exactly 1 person. The first Soviet spacecraft capable of carrying multiple crew members, the Voskhod 1, did not launch until October 1964. A 3-person secret mission, more than 3 years before the technology to carry 3 people existed, is not just unlikely. It is, by the engineering record, impossible. The Bochum Observatory, the one facility that appeared to support the brothers' findings, later retracted its corroboration. Upon further analysis, they concluded the woman's transmission had come from the ground, not from orbit. And then there is the broader pattern. Torrebert claimed to have intercepted 9 unverified manned missions. Not one was independently confirmed by any other tracking station. Not the CIA's listening networks, not Joe Drill Bank in England, not any of the dozens of observatories actively monitoring Soviet activity during the space race. The evidence, when examined closely, does not hold. But here is where this story becomes something larger than 2 brothers in Turin. Because even if every single recording is fabricated, even if the Judica-cordiglia brothers invented all of it, the underlying premise is not wrong. The Soviet Union did erase cosmonauts from history. Bondarenko is proof. The Netherlands catastrophe is proof. In the years since the USSR collapsed, Soviet archives have slowly yielded records of cosmonauts quietly removed from training programs, never acknowledged, their files sanitized. We have documented cover-ups of launch failures, deaths on the pad, missions that went wrong and simply ceased to officially exist. The system the brothers were accusing, a system that hid fires, explosions, and deaths for decades, was absolutely real. Consider Grigory Nelyubov. Nelyubov was selected in Group 1, the original cosmonaut class, the same group as Gagarin. By most accounts, he was one of the most gifted pilots of his generation. Some believed he would be the one to go first. He never flew. In 1961, he was involved in a minor disciplinary incident with military police. A confrontation at a railway station, a refusal to apologize. It was nothing, by most standards. But in the Soviet program, nothing was nothing. He was removed, transferred to a remote airbase in the Soviet Far East, and then erased. The official photographs of Group 1 were altered. Nelyubov's face was airbrushed out, replaced with shadow, or simply cropped from the frame. His name disappeared from the records. To the outside world, he had never existed. He died in 1966, struck by a train near his posting. He was 31 years old. Then there is Vladimir Komarov. Komarov flew Soyuz 1 in April 1967. Before launch, Soviet engineers had identified over 200 structural and mechanical failures in the spacecraft. 200 known problems. The mission should not have happened. It happened anyway. Komarov knew, his friends said he knew, he reportedly told those close to him that he did not expect to come back. But Gagarin was the backup pilot, and Komarov would not let Gagarin fly a craft he knew was going to kill someone. So he flew it himself. Soyuz 1 tumbled in orbit. The solar panels failed. On re-entry, the parachute system malfunctioned. Komarov hit the ground at nearly 90 miles per hour. His remains fit into a small urn. The Soviet Union acknowledged his death. It was impossible not to. But the engineering failures, the fact that everyone involved knew the spacecraft was unsafe, that was buried for decades. The recordings may be fake. The question they raise is not. Aquila Judica-cordiglia died in 2015. He spent his later years as a cardiologist and philanthropist. He never recanted. Giovanni became an audio and photographic expert at the court of Turin, a career built on precision and institutional credibility. He never recanted either. What the Soviet archive eventually revealed was not a list of confirmed secret cosmonauts, but something almost more disturbing, a program so committed to controlling its own narrative that it actively destroyed evidence of failure at every level. Researchers who accessed the Russian archive after 1991 found gaps, documents missing, dates inconsistent, personnel files referencing individuals whose records had been removed. The absence of a record, it turns out, is itself a kind of record. What the brothers stumbled onto, with their chicken wire antennas and salvaged circuit boards, was not just a mystery. It was a mirror held up to a system that had decided at the highest levels that the story of human achievement in space was more important than the humans achieving it, that the image of a program moving forward, always forward, was worth more than the truth of what it cost. The cosmonauts who flew understood this. Some of them said so in private. They flew anyway, because the alternative was to let someone else take the seat. Someone who deserved to know the truth just as much as they did. The most credible space historians conclude that the judica-cordiglia recordings are not genuine transmissions from dying cosmonauts. But those same historians acknowledge that the Soviet program's capacity for concealment was so total that a truly definitive answer may be impossible. We may never know what happened in those early years, and that, more than any recording, more than any translated transcript, is the real legacy of the Lost Cosmonauts. History, as the Soviets understood it, was not a record of what happened. It was a record of what they chose to tell you. The void between those two things is where this story lives. Subscribe to the Cosmic Deep. Next episode, the man who built the Soviet space program from nothing, and the series of hidden disasters that brought it down. The void remembers what history forgot.